Cue that beat.
This is what happens. You guys just hear something Eagles, and then it's like a dog. You see the squirrel.
I would say 75% of all NFL quarterbacks can be dialed down to different flavors of Kirk Cousins. They're all just Kirk Cousins. All of them.
So there's conditions.
No, I absolutely understand do not draft list. If someone's on my do not draft list, I'm not drafting him.
Hey guys, welcome into the Mind the Gap podcast. Aaron Palsgrove, Ryan Wright, Tyler Hill. Our consensus top 50 is out. You can go check it out right here. But if you follow me, follow Ryan, follow Tyler, we will have posted it by the point this is up. You can check it out. That is what we're doing today. We are talking about our top 50, which is it's consensus. The three of us work together to make this. Some of us are mad. Some of us are like, oh, this is so much fun.
The three of us working together, that's unheard of.
It was a mistake. I got to be honest. I had gained 6 gray hairs in the time that we did this. But yeah, we're going to go through that. And there's a lot of stuff we have to discuss, how we are with consensus boards, how we compare to get other experts, which one of us moved the needle, what does our top 15 end up looking like? I'll give you a spoiler. Ryan ended up moving the needle on most players. So that's fun. But before we do that, there are a few, we're going to call it a Thursday news dump because there's a thing called a Friday news dump where basically big companies wait until Friday afternoon to throw all the news at the wall because it can't be reported. Then it's a thing. It's a tradition. Bad news typically. So we're just gonna do a news dump today on Thursday. We're gonna run through a few stories, and I think there's one that we're actually gonna full on analyze. First one is Zach Vaughn, Saquon Barkley signed by the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles are yet again doing something no other team does. They're continuously ahead of the curve. We'll see if this move works. But first, they bring Vaughn and Barkley on for 1-year deals, and now they re-sign Zach Vaughn 3 years, 51 million, 36 of it guaranteed. Saquon Barkley 2 years, $41.2 million extension. So now he is on a 3-year deal, making 20 million per year over the last 2 years of said deal. Fantastic move by the Eagles. We talked
Get
about
them
it
early.
Yeah, exactly. There's nothing that really needs to be said there. Go Birds. There's a ton of players who got released in the last few days, and I was like, and before this, I said, "Hey, do you guys want to talk about it?" And Tyler very clearly said, "No, they're all washed." I'm still going to tell you about it. Devontae Adams, Joey Bosa, Evan Ingram, Tyler Lockett, Darius Slay, James Bradbury, Javon Hargrave, Gardner Minshew, Jamal Williams, Devin Duvernay, Draymond Jones, Roy Robertson Harris, Rayshawn Jenkins, George Fant, and Raekwon Davis. Are there any names there that actually feel, I don't know, I guess fantasy viable is the way I'm going to phrase that, might affect the upcoming season?
I think one that hasn't been mentioned is still Cooper Kupp, which will play into fantasy purposes, but I think Kupp will end up being released, but returning on a team-friendly deal if they
You think
can't
he's
find a
going
trade.
back to the Rams?
I think so.
Okay.
Again, we talked about previously how close the Rams were to beating the Eagles. If they fixed their linebacker core and actually played a better run game against the Eagles, they win the game.
Funnily enough, London Tipton from Sweet Life of Zack and Cody,
Mhm.
the actress who plays her, Brenda Song, went on Mythical Kitchen this week and talked about that. It was a fantastic clip. She is a ball knower extraordinaire,
London
Brenda Song.
Tipton knows ball.
Knows ball and then some. It was a very impressive. And then she started just rattling off like Kobe game score, box score numbers, and Homegirl is a elite level ball knower. Mad respect. Other things of note, Matt Stafford did return to LA, which was a big deal, but I think much ado about nothing, right? There was a lot of conversation. It was the talk of the town, and then nothing happened. But Trey Hendrickson, the sack leader, 3.5 sacks more than anybody else in the NFL last year, has been given permission to seek a trade by the Cincinnati Bengals. He said, "It's been an honor and privilege, quote, to represent Cincinnati over the last 4 years. I love the city and organization. I appreciate the privilege of now being allowed to explore my options." That's per Adam Schefter. Ian Rappaport broke the story.
When I think about the Bengals, you have Chase, Higgins, Burrow. They all got to be paid some top money. But we talked about it. The Bengals defense is the reason they consistently lose and lose early.
They fired Lou Anarumo.
So I don't know what their plan is because they just drafted Miles Murphy, hasn't done a ton recently.
That's a polite way of
So
saying he sucks currently.
polite. So I don't really know what their game plan is. You're going to let your best guy on the defense walk away? Doesn't really seem too smart for me personally, but
Yeah.
I would try to pay him, make amends, and not tag T. Higgins. Go out and get a wide receiver in the draft.
This feels like didn't they already tag T. Higgins? They already
They
tagged him, didn't
did.
yeah, they already tagged T. Higgins, so that's
Yeah, that was just a vendetta thing. Like I didn't think that he should have done that.
oh, okay, gotcha. I think I'm curious that this is we see this move all the time, right? Permission to seek a trade, and I mean the Jets just gave I think Alan Lazard permission to seek a trade. It's basically saying we think you are worth X, player thinks they are worth Y. So you're going to go out and see if other teams think you are worth Y. And if other teams think that, then we'll trade you to that team so that they can give you that money. But if not, come back and we will give you X. So this is the Bengals' way of saying, okay, you think you're worth that? Great, go prove it to us. It's a prove it moment. And if he does get traded, and this really switches up the Miles Garrett, Milton Williams market, right? Ty? This feels like it made defensive free agency and the defensive offseason much more interesting.
I guess the one thing would be, will they do the Matt Stafford thing where it's, hey, go find it, we'll resign you? If not, guys, I just think this is a bad sign for Burrow in his career. Like I'm sitting here, the Bengals are known as a very cheap organization. This is bad for the Bengals. They tried to do the Chiefs thing where it's drafting a bunch of defensive players when you have your quarterback in place. Last year was Chris Jenkins. The year before that, Miles Murphy, DJ Turner, Jordan Battle. Jordan Battle is really the only one out of that list I like. Dax Hill hasn't panned out. Cam Taylor Britt, same thing. Zach Carter, same thing. Joseph Osai, the year that they took Jamar Chase.
I think Cam Taylor Britt is a plus starter at this point. I don't know if I don't.
Okay, sure.
I
So
think
two out of all those. That's a bad hit rate.
that's fair. That's yeah. The point stands.
And so now you're left with only Trey Hendrickson. Mike Hilton has not played as good in the slot. So your defense right now is hemorrhaging. And this has been known as a cheap organization in every facet when it comes to contracts. They didn't sign T. Higgins to an extension. They franchise tagged him. They didn't sign Trey Hendrickson last offseason when he wanted an extension. Honestly, guys, I'm looking at this. When you have the people you do in the AFC right now, Lamar, Mahomes, Allen, and they're on teams that are willing to go all in. We talked about the Eagles with contracts and how they're going all in and pushing everything to the table. We are going to get the best roster possible. If you're trying to compete with that, I don't know how, like, Burrow's amazing. That's not enough to get you over the hump. If the Bengals do not want to change what they're doing as a franchise, Burrow won't win a Super Bowl.
That's not even enough to make the playoffs.
No, it's not. There has to be some level of all in on some capacity. Like the Rams, F them picks. They won a Super Bowl
Yeah, or you have
against
to
the
kill it in the
Bengals.
draft. And so that's why I went through all those picks is because they're not spending a lot of money and they're whiffing in the draft with cheap contracts. And so you got to have one or the other.
Yeah, it's a recipe for disaster, and the Bengals are plummeting. I'm curious to see. So the big question mark is Lou Anarumo, who was with Trey Hendrickson from 21 to 24, and then Dennis Allen, who was the DC for Trey Hendrickson from 2017 to 2020. Dennis Allen, Chicago Bears defensive coordinator. Lou Anarumo is now the Indianapolis Colts defensive coordinator. Two destinations that he probably would feel comfortable going. I think those are the two leaders. I don't. Okay, I'm not gonna say
You
leaders.
think the Bears are going to make more trades?
They might.
Well, I think the Colts, though, is a very intriguing part because they do need pass rush
They do.
and they need to just make the team as good around Anthony Richardson as possible and give him the best shot possible to see if he's a guy this year.
Right.
So
Commanders is the other name.
I could see them doing something.
Commanders is the other name because they're in every trade conversation right now because they are pushing to maximize the Jaden Daniels window, as they should, to their credit. Um, yeah, so Trey Anderson asked for a trade. We'll see how this goes. Or seeking a trade. We'll see how this goes. We got a consensus top 50. This was absolute hell to put together, and I blame Ryan. But we have a list of 50 guys. So I'm just going to rattle through at the top 15. If you want to see it all, you can check it out on Instagram or on Twitter. I'll have it up at Aaron Palsgrove or Tyler Hill. Will have it up. Ryan is Ryan Wright. Go check it out. And then Instagram, Mind the Gap. We'll have it up and TikTok as well. Our consensus number one big board as of today. Number one, Abdul Carter. Number two, Travis Hunter. And then I'm going to go uh, tier break. I'll explain this in a second. Tier break, Ashton Genty, Mason Graham, 3 4. Will Johnson, corner out of Michigan, and Tyler Hill are basically tied for 5 and 6.
Tyler
Tyler
Warren. You did
Hill?
say
Did
Tyler Hill. I wish, man. It would be very cool to be six
Tyler
five
Hill at
two
6
260.
to the Raiders.
They don't
Shamar,
need me. They don't need me.
Shamar Stewart at 7. That is high, but Shamar Stewart at 7, Will Campbell at 8, Malachi Starks at 9, Jalen Walker rounds up our top 10, Armand Membu at 11, Tet McMillan at 12, Mike Green, Cam Ward, Micah Williams at 13, 14, 15, Cam Ward, quarterback, at 14. And that rounds out our top 15. In this, we have five different tiers, 5 different tiers of players. We have, based on the way we did this, is we each ranked them one through however many. Ryan had 100 guys on his list. Um, but we ranked them at one out of however long our list was. And then we take those numbers and we'll add them together, divide by 3, and that gives you a score. So, for instance, Abdul Carter has a 1.33 score because he was at 1, 1, and 2 on our 3 lists. Travis Hunter was at 2, 2, and 1. So that gives him a 1.67 average score. And then we rank it by score. Whoever has the lowest score is the best player. That's why Abdul Carter is 1, Travis Hunter is 2. You can see very clearly where the tier breaks are. There's a tier break, a multiple point tier break between Travis Hunter and Ashton Genty. So it's Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, and then break. Genty Graham, break, hefty break, probably one of the biggest. And then Will Johnson, Tyler Warren, another big break. Shamar Stewart, Will Campbell, Malachi Starks, Jalen Walker, Membu, final break in the top 15. And then Tet McMillan, Mike Green, Cam Ward, Micah Williams, massive drop off, Ohio State offensive lineman. So 16 Josh Simmons, 17 Jonathan Jackson, and then you get into the rest of the list. I'm not going to rattle that off because that's bad radio. Is there anything that we wanted before we get into the rest of the show, before we get into the fun segment that we have planned? Is there anything how do we feel about our top 15 compared to consensus?
Gonna make it a lot easier to do some mock drafts now that we do have a consensus, and I can't take Donovan Jackson at 4 overall to the Patriots.
You still could.
Well, listen,
You're right. I very good.
I took
That's
Josh
half the
Simmons the
fun.
first one. You know it happens.
That's half the
There's
fun of doing the mocks the way we do them, though, is that because we each have our own separate boards and we add them together to make this consensus board. And like the whole point of us butting heads during the creation of this is to hopefully be correct in the future.
Yeah, overall, this top 15, I think, is pretty solid. There's not a lot here that I would get mad at all. I was having a discussion with one of my reporter friends in the newsroom the other day, and we were just talking about basically this draft. Once you go prospects 10 to 40, there's
Hmm.
just not a lot of separation. So
There's not.
I think this 15, I think, is a good solid 15 where I don't think there's many prospects that would be able to move their way into this. Like this is kind of the meat, I would say, of these guys have separated themselves. But man, once you get past 15, there's not a lot of separation. I'm honestly probably not going to get super mad unless you have a guy 20, 30 spots outside of where I have them.
Which we're going to talk about outliers, and that's our next segment. I do a few names that I should mention. Shamar Stewart at 9 points, a score of 9, was 7th on our big board. The drop between Tyler Warren and Shamar Stewart, I think the way we have it, there's a clear drop off from Will Johnson, Tyler Warren to then Shamar Stewart and Will Campbell. How do we feel about that? Because Ryan, I know you both are high on Will Johnson, and he's our fifth best player in this class, corner one, clearly. It feels like he's been under discussed to be in the top 5.
See, on my personal board, I had Will Johnson at 6, Tyler Warren at 9, and right behind Tyler Warren is Shamar Stewart. So again, it's a very, very close race for me personally.
That's so funny.
So
Hold on,
I would put them in a different tier than Shamar Stewart, though.
I
So
agree.
that is a very good distinction of where I think the tier is cut off.
And I think Will Johnson has been under discussed, just prospect fatigue. Like last year, he was 2 or 1 on a lot of people's boards. Then he has injuries this season, and honestly, that's pretty much it. And I think it's just a lot of prospect fatigue. I think he is really, really good. He's a great player and will be in the NFL.
looking at our lists, there are some, I don't want to call them fallacies, but the way the math works out, a player that we have consistently in the middle will will rise. So for instance, Tyler has Will Johnson at 6. I have Will Johnson at 10. Brian has him at 6 as well. But he moves up to 5 in our rankings because a guy like Malachi Starks, who Ryan has at 5, I have at 11, and Tyler has at 14. So players in our consensus board based on pure math are rewarded for all three of us feeling similarly about them. If we agree about something, then that's going to make a player rise based purely on math, which I think is an interesting
Little behind the
tid
scenes.
yeah, tidbit. Are we ready to get into our next segment? And I'm so excited to start.
Let's
Let's
do
do
it.
it.
So, Tyler had a great idea earlier today that we are running with, and it is called Prospect Court. Um, we have access to what each other's ranked every player. And so the way this is going to work is each one of us is going to take the stand with a take, whether that be Shamar Stewart is the worst player in football. Shadur Sanders was way too low on our list. Cam Ward was way too high on our list. And those aren't just examples. That's not, yeah, but those are just examples. And we're doing this based on where we have them ranked. For instance, Shadur Sanders. Ryan is going to defend his take on Shadur Sanders. Tyler is going to become his cross examiner, the prosecutor, saying, hey, I think you're wrong, but tell me why. Tell me why this is the way that it is. And we have 9 cases to get to with a defendant and then a cross examination, including one more extra case of just open court. And that's where we're going to start. We need to talk about running backs. That's the open court is just the running back class as a whole.
It's recess.
Yeah, exactly. This is just a isn't just a board meeting, basically. What the heck happened? Um, Ashton Genty is at 3 in our rankings consensusly, and I think that's a very good place to put him. I think we had him at 3, 3, and 4 overall, right? And then if you keep looking at running backs, our next one is Omarion Hampton.
Omarion.
I think it's
Omarion?
Omarion, yeah.
Omarion? There's so many ways to pronounce his name. Uh, Omarion Hampton, 26, has a score of 26. And I feel that feels relatively with consensus. I don't know if that's a crazy take. Travion Henderson out of Ohio State, 40. And then right outside of our top 50, I don't think I missed anybody there. No, right outside of our top 50, Quinshon Judkins and Caleb Johnson out of Ohio State and Iowa. So that gives us 5 running backs in the top 55 ish. That feels like a lot. I mean, we already established this is a good running back class, but that feels like a lot, right?
Well, and honestly, if we kept going, there was gonna be probably at least 5 more in the 25 spots from 50 to 25. Because I think we hit the guys that are the top tier, might be first round prospects. But man, we talk about the depth. I mean, in the top 100, I would not be surprised if we end up with 12 to 15 running backs.
Me personally, I had 3 in my top 32. Top 31, by the way. I had Henderson 31, and then I was the highest on Hampton by a wide margin. Um, was I? I think I was. No, 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 okay, not nearly as big of a margin as I thought. But I am the highest on Hampton and by far the highest on Henderson as well. Do you think the history is going to look back at us lovingly for being this high on the running back class?
Dude, I'm an advocate for pay the running backs, so I don't think it's gonna be bad. Yeah, I'm very comfortable spending a day two pick on a running back if he deserves it, frankly. I'm a little interested to see. I've seen a lot of Omarion Hampton hype recently, and everyone's like, he could legitimately be the RB1. I'm not pushing that narrative whatsoever, and I want to make that clear. But some people are saying it's closer than you might think. And when we get to running back positional breakdown, we'll obviously cover that. But again, the depth is insane. I don't think we see 10 go in the first 3 rounds. I think we could see 8 reasonably. So it'll be interesting. There are a lot of teams that could use another running back.
Tyler, you're the highest of the three of us on Caleb Johnson, and you have him very near Travion Henderson, who I have higher. What do you see as like the difference between those two guys, and why are you higher on Johnson?
So Henderson is a very, very explosive back. You saw it when he took a screen 75 yards to the house against Texas, right? At any point, he can hit a home run. He was injured a lot in college. That concerns me when he is a little bit smaller. He's well built because he's kind of on the shorter side, but he is only 202 pounds. So that's a concern just in terms of durability. He was never the maximized lead back at Ohio State because of the injuries, A. And then when Judkins came, they split the carries pretty evenly. I think Judkins even got a little more work. So I think there's some questions on can he carry the bell cow load in the NFL if you want him to. But really, I think more than anything, I just like Caleb Johnson a lot. His burst for a guy who's 224 pounds is rare. He can catch the ball pretty well out of the backfield. Played in a NFL run game, a lot of wide zone. There are so many teams who love that. He runs it really well. Big tackle breaker. When we talk about the stats of Ashton Genty, he had, so many yards after contact. His yards after contact were in third in the nation in rushing just by itself. Caleb Johnson's yards after contact at one point when I was looking at it would have been eighth in the country. Like this dude can run the football. And so I don't know what it finished out at the end of the season, but he was going up against just as many loaded boxes as Ashton Genty was because Iowa has no passing game. And so I think if you get him in a good offense with good offensive line and then just some semblance of a passing game where he's not facing 7, 8 man boxes every time, that burst will be enough to get solid runs. He's not going to break off 80 yarders, but he has enough speed to get 40 yarders. And that's plenty of explosiveness for a running back.
Yeah, I like Johnson. I think going back to Hampton, Hampton feels like a Jameer Gibbs. Not, I don't want to say they don't play similar. I don't think I don't want to make that comp, but in the way that a few years ago the Lions took Jameer Gibbs in the first round at 16, right?
12.
12, 12. I always get those numbers mixed up. I had the range right. Anyways, um, they took Jameer Gibbs early, way earlier than I think people were expecting expecting him to go. In my gut, I feel like Hampton is going to be a Jameer Gibbs. He's going to go to a good team earlier than anybody expects and is going to absolutely annihilate somebody in the running game. And I'm excited to see what he does.
I look out for the Broncos because Genty is right now getting a lot of buzz. Some people are saying Raiders at 6, some people saying Bears at 10.
Heard it
And
here
if he's
first.
gone,
Gentry to the Broncos.
and I was gonna say we in our mock draft we had him going at 20, but if he goes earlier, I would not put it past Sean Payton to take Hampton as a dude that I think is worthy of a first round pick at running back. They have one of, if not the best run blocking O lines in the NFL, just pure statistics wise. Dude, I think he can make that offense go in a different way than it could last year.
I agree. I think Hampton could be a really talented player on a really good team if he lands in the right spot. I would hate to see him wasted on a bad team with a bad O line. That's my worst fear with most of these running backs is running back. It matters. I don't want to say it matters most in the league because quarterback exists, but nurture that they get, the landing spot matters. I think it's a top three position in sports. How much it matters where they land.
Yeah, very few guys are able to just completely overcome their situation. Barry Sanders comes to mind, Adrian Peterson, but it's
Saquon
those
Barkley,
kind. No, not, honestly, no. Like Saquon couldn't
really?
really overcome his New York situation. Like he was a good player, but and I mean he had 1,000 yards at times, but I think in terms of what you saw when he was on a really good team, you saw what Saquon can really be. Where but when I'm talking about Adrian Peterson, Barry Sanders, these are
You're
first
right.
ballot Hall of
Yeah,
Famers, right? And so they're the guys that can overcome their situation. Like honestly, I don't even think Genty is on that level where he could just purely overcome being on probably the Raiders is the example there.
yeah. I think Henry did that. I don't think the Titans' offensive line was good enough to say that he didn't overcome his situation. Let's keep it trucking. We got a lot of show to get to. The first case on our docket, Mr. Ryan Wright is on trial for his mistreatment of Jalen Royals. It is one case of murder.
I was gonna say this is felony misdemeanor.
This is the
Okay.
felon. This is the felony misdemeanor.
Let him cook.
Jalen Royals on our big board is ranked at 33 overall as the wide receiver, I believe 4 or 5. I was correct. Wide receiver 5. And then right behind him,
Should be number one, baby.
And we're gonna get into it.
legitimately the next two spots, Jaden Higgins and Trey Harris. So that would
Oh,
be he is
that's
wide
funny how that
receiver.
works.
He's wide receiver 5 out of our 7 wide receivers in the top 35. Ryan ranked him. You know what? Let's start on the back. Tyler ranked him at 48 overall on his big board. I ranked him at 41. Ryan ranked him at 11.
Dude, I'm actually considering moving him up again.
Mr.
Do it.
Wright, Mr. Wright, you are on trial for a felony misdemeanor of this exercise. Please present your case.
Also, real quick, I will be timing this a minute 30 for Ryan, then a minute 30 for Aaron,
I
and
don't know if I
then
have a minute 30 of
well, I mean, you don't have to do a minute 30. That's just the time
Well, what if
limits.
the jury's biased?
the
Well,
jury's
I'm
Tyler.
that's why I'm not gonna like make a judgment because I'm on the lower side of Jalen Royals. Obviously, this will be for the people to decide when we.
That's what I'm getting at. The
No,
jury's biased.
this will
It's
be for the
rigged.
people to decide when we put it on social media.
All right, all
Because
right, all
that's
right.
what if it was just me, I'm obviously no matter what you say, probably gonna be
Make a
like,
Jalen Royals edit.
Tyler's the judge.
yeah. I saw what was so funny, Ryan, is when you talked about the Matthew Golden edits. Then legitimately, the next time I opened TikTok, it was a Matthew Golden edit. So
As you
Yeah, and
should
you
be.
saw me in the comments.
yeah, people are Big Brother's always listening. So we are gonna start the timer right now. Ryan, go for it.
All right, so Jalen Royals defense, prototypical size, 6 foot 205. Some people are actually comping him to a bigger and better Brandon Ayuk, which I love because Brandon Ayuk is not the best route runner out there. 71 receptions, 1,080 yards, and 15 touchdowns as a junior. 55, 834, and 6 in 7 games as a senior. So that comboed with his 2.21 and 3.0 yards per route run in 2 seasons as a starter, 3.96 yards per route run from the slot on 104 career routes. There are 4 wide receivers with a higher number than him: CeeDee Lamb, Smitty, Jamison Williams, and Jalen Waddle. He only did run 13% of his snaps from the slot. 87% were from out wide. 2025 wide receivers who averaged 6.5 yards after the catch per reception and caught over 60% of contested catches in his career. Only person to do it was Jalen Royals. 7.9 yards after the catch per reception and 17 missed tackles on just 55 receptions in 2024. Dude runs his routes well, wins after the catch, and wins the contested balls. Last stat: targeted depth downfield. I actually sent this to you guys. He's
Timer went
number
off, but
one
finish up.
in yards after the catch from behind the line of scrimmage, and he is a deep threat. 24% target share and average 9.1 yards after the catch down the field.
First off, you presented a very compelling case. That was well spoken. You've clearly been preparing for this for the last 2 months. That said, I agree with most of what you said. I look at Jalen Royals, I watch him on film. On film, he feels underwhelming. Statistically, I am overwhelmed by the fact that he is a clearly very productive, very talented wide receiver. That said, I struggle with his athletic traits. I struggle with just the flashiness on film, and some of the stuff you say is yards per route run, right? Just overall yards. And he played at Utah State. I'm a small school advocate. I was high on Quinion Mitchell last year. I'm going to be high on Toledo kids coming out of the draft. I'm really excited for Mike Green coming out of Marshall. I like the small school underdog mentality. I mean, I went to Liberty, right? I, I was looking for Quentin Coley in this draft class. He's not going to be in it. But that said, I understand why you like him. I don't understand the degree to which you like him. At 11 overall, ahead of guys like pulling up your list so I'm not misspeaking, you have him ahead of,
Burden and Tet.
well, I'm not talking about receivers. I'm talking more about Mike Green, Michael Williams, James Pierce Jr., Will Campbell. You have him ahead of Will Campbell, who is the consensus offensive tackle one in this class by just about every other board you look at, mine as well. I get why you like him. I do. I have no issues with that. I am concerned with the degree with which you like him, and I don't get it. And I don't think you're going to be able to convince me of why you like him this much. Again, I had him at 41. That puts him at
Not high enough.
that puts him at as a second round player, borderline first rounder. That's as high as he's going. I don't want 11, Brian. That feels genuinely feels like a mistreatment of this exercise, and it flipped our big board.
No, it didn't. It's where he should be.
No, it's not.
Buddy.
I don't understand. even if everyone tells you, I appreciate you
Dude,
sticking
when
to
you
your.
know ball, you know ball. That's all I'm
Listen,
saying.
I've said from the beginning, stand on what you think. This is not about what we think. This is about what
Jalen Royals is
Ryan
my
thinks.
diamond in the rough and pulled that cat out of the bag, marked my stamp on it in what, January?
Yeah, but you have so many diamond in the roughs. That's the issue
I have
here.
2, Donovan Jackson and Jalen Royals, not a single other guy would I mark my stamp on. Those are the only 2 players.
That's what I was gonna say because you were saying he wrecked our big board. Like, there's
Yeah,
two,
I know.
and I think Jackson
I
he
have a
ended up
flair
in the
for the
20s, which is about where he should, question mark?
17.
I think
He's
no, he's
17.
right
I like
behind Simmons.
so that's
he's
Yeah.
like, I'm not mad at that. I mean, it's a little high for me, but
I have a flair for the dramatic. What can I say? Um, I don't know. I'm not going to be able to be fully convinced on this. Is there anything I'm missing? I agree he's a good player. That's the issue here. It's like I'm trying to pick apart a meal that I agree is delicious. I just don't think it's the best meal I've
Order
ever
in the
had.
court, order in the court.
I was
That's
gonna say
how.
we do have to move on. We will clip that for social and see what people think.
All right.
We
Okay.
will put a voting like this for Royals like for but we'll figure it out on a way to do it. So now we move on to Luther Burden III, wide receiver out of Missouri. It's going to be Aaron defending with me cross-examining and then Ryan listening. He ended up at 22 on our big board, cumulative score of 22.67. And then I am trying to pull up right here where he was for everyone's list. Here we go. He is 25 for Ryan, 30 for me, and then 13 for Aaron. Like I said, putting him up into those early 20s. So we'll start with you, Ryan. Let me get the, or not Ryan, Aaron, excuse me.
Yeah.
I'll get the clock going. Aaron, you are good to go.
So when I look at wide receivers, something I value, like genuinely value, is I want to see a man amongst boys in college football because the best receivers in the NFL looked as if they did not belong in college football. Something I really liked about AJ Brown's film, DK Metcalf, right? Go back and watch Devonta Smith. Devonta Smith was not a large, he wasn't a man amongst boys via size. He was a man amongst boys in every other way that he played. He won the Heisman for a reason, right? When I watched, this is going to be a comparison between Tet McMillan, who I had at 12, and Luther Burden, who I now have at 13. I flipped it. So Luther used to be my wide receiver one, now it's Tet. I really liked I didn't like Tet because I struggled with Tet because of his inability. I just feel like he wasn't explosive enough for me. Luther Burden, however, in comparison, he was quick, shifty, run after the catch kind of player. He is the kind of player that you give the ball to and say, do something, and they will. Has the ability to take over a game with a single touch of the football. And there's explosiveness that the NFL has and every team needs that he provides. That said, he has very much fallen since the last time we did one of these, right? The big things that worried me: speed, explosiveness, and hand size. Or not speed, explosiveness, but like testing. His hand size worried me, especially because he's not the best contested catch receiver. So that concerned me. That said, I really value what he brings in explosiveness, and I really value what he brings in run after the catch to the point where I do have him as my 13th best player in this class because I feel like every team could use a guy like him.
So minute 30 on the clock for me. Luther Burden, tough for me to figure out. He has so many manufactured targets, screens, RPOs especially, where it is just get the ball in his hands, and you do see him make people miss. But man, I just don't see him getting open 1v1 a lot. I made a video about this. He at no point wins when a cornerback has leverage on him. That's what I see other guys doing in this draft class. And it's something that I would want to see out of my number one receiver. Really worried he's going to be a slot only guy. 85% of his snaps came from the slot at Missouri. And really, when I look at his profile, if when he's not getting open one on one a lot, just against DBs, worried he's going to be a slot only guy who gets targets only fed to him and then has to win on contested catches, which I think he's solid at. He makes some acrobatic catches, especially in the Texas A&M game, is the one that comes to mind where he made a couple really good grabs on the outside. But I don't want him to be relying on that, right? Especially at a guy that is 5'11 and change. That's not what I want you to win on. So because of that, it's tough for me to say, hey, number one receiver, Luther Burden, if I think you might have to do a ton to get him open instead of just him being able to get himself open.
I hear you, and I get it. Like I understand I see the flaws more than I did recently. I went back and rewatched film. He's my wide receiver too. I have Ted ahead of him because I do think that Ted has that ability to get open. He has that perfect route running ability. I just think that Burden's athleticism is something that is so unteachable and untrainable. You can't teach explosiveness. You can't, I mean, in ways, but you can't teach elite level athleticism. And I think he has that. His on field speed is top tier. And I really value that in a player. And I value the fact that he looks like he doesn't belong in college football when you put the ball in his hand. I'm willing to move him back if I've watched film and I get more concerned. He's a 13 because it felt like I would be untrue to myself if I pulled him back any farther than I did.
I was just saying, listen, Stead.
And move Jalen Royals up, right?
No, I can move one guy back and not move anybody else up. If I moved him back, I think I'd move him back as far as 19 on my list, right behind Colston Loveland, ahead of Matthew Golden.
who is who we're talking about next year,
I
where I
stacked the
will
wide
be
receivers.
on the stand. We have a lot of wide receivers, just to give you guys a little preview here. We are very different on receivers, probably more than any other position group when I looked at it
Oh, definitely.
today.
There's a reason that we have wide receiver, wide receiver, wide receiver, and then two offensive linemen, and then the rest of this class when it comes to like court cases that the judge is seeing today in prospect court. Um, that's I wanted to start with a stacked wide receiver docket, right? Because Ryan's really high on Royals. I'm really high on Burden. Tyler's really high on Golden. We each have our own person that we're really high on. The biggest difference being, other than those guys, is that Ryan's also really low on Ted McMillan. And I guess that's something we should talk about when it comes to the receivers show, but that'll wait until we do a full positional breakdown. Tyler, you are discussing Matthew Golden, who you have at 13, right where I have Luther Burden.
Yes. So I'm going to start the clock here, make sure that keep myself accountable. So starting with Matthew Golden, legit deep threat, 17 yards per reception this year. And this is an RPO heavy offense in Texas, where normally that would bring your yards per reception down. Doesn't for him. Played outside 80% of the snaps at Texas. Guys, I think he could do either outside or slot because he's such a twitchy athlete. No one is able to press him on the line of scrimmage. No one at Georgia was able to do it. No one at Arizona State was able to do it. No one at Clemson was able to do it. These are the premier programs, especially defensively, in college football. And that's when he shined. His separation is the best in the class. No one gets open at the break point better than Matthew Golden. And when you look at him and maybe just his size, and then you see the separation, you think, can't be a contested catch guy. Actually, he is an amazing contested catch guy. The body control that he has in the air, he showed it all throughout the Georgia game. There's a one-handed catch against Vandy. That is insane body control, high pointing the ball, and she tracks the ball so well. And he ties it all together because he's not just silo deep threat, silo separator, silo ball tracker. You see him tie it all together in reps. And there's some really, really high level stuff on his film. His statistical profile is not the best. You know who he played with at quarterback? Quinn Ewers, who had a torn oblique for the back half of the season. So, and they were trying to feed Isaiah Bond reps because he was the star transfer, blah, 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 blah. We can get into the politics of the transfer portal another day.
I'd
Guys,
rather not.
nothing he does is bad. There's no part of his game that's bad. It is all at least above average. And then he is elite at certain things like separation.
I guess that's your timer. Mr. Wright, your cross, your
Oh, wait,
witness.
sorry, I
S-
almost muted myself.
So I will start with the fact that I don't think Matthew Golden's bad at particularly anything like Tyler has said. He's 36 on my personal list, and then obviously that averaged out. But my biggest thing is inconsistencies. So it's just littered with them. Never led the team in receptions. Below 2 yards on yards per route run for his career. He had 1.66 freshman year, 1.64 his sophomore year, and actually it boosted this year with the 2.1. And then again, we talk about never using PFF, but I'm using it just because it works in my favor right now. That's how it's supposed to work. Never had above a 75.6 PFF receiving grade. Now, I will say, I'm not hating on Matthew Gold. It's just I'm the cross examiner and I'm trying to point out the flaws. But the dude has flashes. 4-star recruit, 93 prospect grade. He was involved in the offense as a true freshman. Went 38, 5, 84, and then 7, which was second on the team in receiving touchdowns. Led the team in receiving touchdowns as a sophomore, despite missing 3 games. And like Tyler said, probably second best in the class at contested balls and has elite athleticism like he showed in the combine.
Real quick point on where I would like to see Matthew Golden go. I think there's a couple of different spots that would be really fun. I think the earliest you would talk about it is the Cowboys who need a wide receiver 2 in the worst way. So if Tet's gone at that point and they have him number 2 on their board, I think that's a fun spot. But
Stay in Texas.
Mhm.
exactly, stay in Texas, dude. Why not?
Which I think there's actual genuine value to that. Like
Yeah,
player,
because
I mean,
it's CeeDee Lamb and nobody out there. Like it is just we're I guess I like Jake Ferguson, but you know,
but more to that, I was talking about the staying in Texas bit. I think there's actual value to keeping players near home. One, I mean, we look at what happened when Saquon Barkley came back to Philadelphia after going to Penn State. Abdul Carter wants to be in Pennsylvania. I'm just thinking of Pennsylvania names right now, but there is Aiden Hutchinson went from Michigan to Detroit. I think it worked, right? There is serious value in keeping players in their backyard. It makes home lives better. It can decrease just feeling homesick. The rookie depression can be real. Like, look at Bryce Young. Look at what happened when he fixed when we he possibly probably fixed his mental health with a better head coach, right? It changed his whole game. There are live changes happening to these rookies, and keeping them near home is good. Yeah.
Matthew Golden's actually from Houston, so
Dude, we
that
just
might
talked
cause a
about
little turmoil.
he does not need a wide receiver. Houston does not
I
need
know
to draft a
that's
wide
what I'm
receiver.
saying. It would be counterintuitive for them to draft one, but if he did went to Dallas, the family might have some problems.
the other spot that I think would be fun for him is the Steelers. I think he pairs really well from a skill set perspective with George Pickens on the other side. They're another team that needs a receiver in the worst way. Again, outside of George Pickens. And also, what do we know about Justin Fields? Doesn't throw with a ton of anticipation. So you need a guy for him if they bring him back, which it looks like they probably will. That's going to separate by a lot and not just separate like you would need for a normal quarterback. He needs a couple yards of separation before he's pulling the trigger. Golden, I think, can do that for him.
That would be good value using our new board.
Yeah, it would.
Ah,
But I also heard Emeka Egbuka E squared for the Steelers. Just getting
yeah,
he's in a I think more than anything else, the first thing that people use to describe Emeka is he's an adult. He's a veteran. There's a good head on his shoulders. He's a leader. When was the last time you talked about the Steelers locker room and said that that's an adult in the room? When was the last time you said that that is a leader of men in that Steelers wide receiver room? Antonio Brown, Juju Smith-Schuster. Before that, there was even like crazier stuff. George Pickens right now. When was the last time you had that conversation about a
just need a
Steelers receiver?
steady presence.
I think Emeka might do that for them, but I do think drafting receiver might be a wise move for them, and I'm curious to see who they take. Who do we have them taking in the last mock?
We had him trading up for Ted McMillan.
Oh, I'd love that too, actually.
Yeah, traded up to 14, I think. So now we got our next person here, Donovan Jackson. Ryan back as the defendant. Ryan had him at number 4. Me and Aaron both had him in the 20s.
Stand by it.
And well, here's the deal. We are standing by it. I will stand by it as the cross examiner here. We kind of did this on the O line show, but think, it might be someone's first podcast. So you get it. You get it here as well. Ryan, you got a minute 30 defending Donovan Jackson as your number 4 overall player.
All right. So first off, finding stats for O linemen is insanely difficult. So shout out the Ringer because I stole theirs. So Donovan Jackson, 3-year starter, uh, but he moved from left guard to left tackle when Josh Simmons got hurt. We all knew that. Highly intelligent player. You could see it on the film. Film is king. Uh, he could legitimately play any position on the O line, and that's where I think the value is in his versatility. Saves some room on the roster. Good arm length, 33 and a half. Big hands, great punch, and able to play on an island. But the stats that I stole from the Ringer, he allowed just 10 pressures and 1 sack across 443 pass blocking snaps and 13 starts in 2023. And then when he played first game as a left tackle against Penn State against our number one player in the draft, Abdul Carter, he gave up 2 sacks. So after that, the entire championship run, didn't allow a single sack. That's pretty impressive for a guy that has never played the position before. So, in my opinion, Donovan Jackson, for his versatility and intelligence, should be at the very top of this draft.
I'm a judge. I am unbiased. I will keep my mouth shut.
And experience, too. Again, here, 40 starts on the offensive line,
Are we allowed to use PFF if it confirms our priors?
not unless it helps Donovan Jackson's
Oh,
case.
okay.
Yeah, I was
They
gonna
have him
say,
ranked as their 68th best player.
Yeah, PFF's so bad.
you probably shouldn't use it for any argument ever.
Never
Yeah, I
again.
think what a dumb
By the way, they
organization.
also have where is it?
Please
They have
hire me.
Donovan Ezraku at 16 overall.
Dude, okay, I need to go back though, because I didn't actually get to fully dive into him. It was more when I was watching Armand Menbu. I watched him when Boston College played them. There are some clips where
He
he
looks
looks
good.
like a stud, and so I need to actually watch full games of him. Hand up, that is on me. I'm gonna start mine. I was trying to look for a specific stat, but it's not loading, so we'll just stop stalling and do this. So Donovan Jackson, like him as a player, have him in the 20s. Think he should be a first round pick. Thumbs up. Think we're all good there. Where it gets me is when we talk about the positional versatility and him playing tackle, there's just better guys at tackle. And so, when I compare body type wise, I look at him and Membu as being pretty comparable body types, similar height, similar weight, and then just carry it
Yeah, it's
similarly.
exact same arm
Membu's
length.
just better than him. Yeah, exactly. Membu's just better than him. He's a better player. And so that's where, not again, that Donovan Jackson shouldn't be taken the first round, in my opinion, but for him to be the fourth best player, first offensive lineman taken, there's just guys that are better. He's a good pass blocking guard. I'm worried about him moving guys in the run game. He didn't do that. He actually got beat, especially in the Oregon game. Guys crossing his face, guys pushing him back, him not being able to root guys out of a gap. At tackle, this was the stat I was trying to look up because just anecdotally, as I'm watching the games, Ohio State was getting the ball out quick, man. They were getting the ball out. It seemed like less than 2.5 seconds, a lot. And then I want to give him the benefit of the doubt against Carter, but also I just think he struggles with speed. I don't think he moves super well out there. And so
So does
that was the
Membu.
speed. No.
Membu struggled with speed.
Disagree. I completely disagree. He was able to handle speed against Ezraku,
We're
against
having the Membu conversation
Princely,
next.
against all these guys. My timer ran out, but I'm gonna take 15 seconds. So Jackson struggles with speed. I think that's what he showed there. And then he got some chip help. This is what we talked about in the offensive line podcast. And then I think they were getting the ball out pretty quick. So that was when he didn't have any pressures. And then he also just didn't face guys that were super good at speed. Like James Pierce Jr. ran a good number. He's not blowing guys off around the edge when he's on tape for some reason. Weird player. But Notre Dame doesn't have that type of edge rusher. Oregon doesn't have that type of edge rusher. And so that's where I think that is a genuine weakness that I think keeps him at guard. And that's where I disagree about the positional versatility.
This judge is unbiased in this case and will remain so, and I'm not allowed to speak. But if I was allowed to speak, I'd agree with just about everything Tyler said.
So let me ask, if you kept him at guard, where would he be?
Well, where I have him, yeah. In the what do I have him 20. I know he's high 20s for me. Sorry, I don't have it pulled up exactly where he's
See, it's
at.
hard for me because I've listed Donovan Jackson, Will Campbell, and
25.
Membu all as O line with no position.
So I do have a counter to that. Before we get to Armand Membu is our next case on the docket. Before we get to Membu though, and I'm defending him, I think Ryan, you're performing cross.
Yep.
Will Campbell is not loading. There he is. He's ninth on Daniel Jeremiah's big board, one down from the original eighth spot. And he has a quote here that I think is really insightful. And DJ is way more plugged in than we ever will be. Uh, Quote: "There's not much panic around the league as you might expect when it comes to his arm length, due to the discrepancies in measurements between the combine and All Star games slash last year's spring's weigh-ins. He is just scratching the surface of his potential and should start at tackle for a decade, provided he stays healthy." End quote. Daniel Jeremiah, I might not disagree with all of his rankings or his mocks, but I will say he does have his ear to the ground when it comes to what teams are thinking and how GMs are feeling about a player. And GMs are they all viewed him consistently, consensusly as a tackle. So Campbell is going to be drafted as a tackle. And the team who takes him might move him to guard, but he's I think we should get on board with the rest of the community and agree and with the NFL and say, yeah, he's a tackle. Membu, he's by far a tackle as well. I had more questions about Campbell than I did Membu. Um,
Yeah, again, with good punch and good timing, you can do anything you want. I think that negates arm length. But again, film is king. So
Agreed. And I was worried
you could
about Donovan.
legitimately do anything.
I was worried about Donovan Jackson's film, and he looked sluggish compared to some of these other guys in pass pro and in run blocking.
Aaron, this is a
Sorry,
me and
sorry.
Ryan thing, okay? You are on the outside. That's for a different
Setting up.
show.
Stricken from the record.
Yeah, it is.
Stricken from the record.
The
Gone.
judge just spoke up.
Gone. All right. So next up here,
I'm so sorry.
like Aaron said, we got Armand Membu, tackle slash guard. I do think he's a tackle. We're just going to go with that. Out of Missouri, played right tackle at Missouri, number 79. Aaron will be the defendant here. Ryan will be cross examining. Membu came in at number 11 on our big board, which would make him O line 2 and tackle 2. And when we scroll over to where everyone had him, Membu was 18 on Ryan's board. He was 10 on mine, and then 6 on Aaron's. So, Aaron, we will start with you defending your really high ranking of Armand Membu.
So let me just start by saying thank you all for listening, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. I appreciate your time, even though you were forced to be here today, taken away from your jobs and your careers and your livelihoods. Um, Membu, he rose for me steadily throughout this process. I will say that he rose past guys like Jalen Walker, Tyler Warren, Shamar Stewart, Will Johnson, not as much due to his ability, but more due to my questioning of others. The fact that he jumped Malachi Starks, Ted McMillan, Luther Burden, Mike Green, the guys that I started to have questions about, he quickly jumped ahead of. And then the more I watched, the more I just fell in love. And then the combine happened. 9.82 unofficial RAS score with an incredible 491 40-yard dash, standing at 332 pounds. Fantastic. 10-yard split of 1.74, which is the 91st percentile of offensive tackles. 97th percentile in both broad and vertical jump with a 34-inch vert and a 9-foot broad. Explosive as a player. The explosiveness that he presented at the combine only mimics what he does in film, where he is nasty. He is a streak that I thought only Will Campbell possessed in this class. I was wrong. Will Campbell's nasty, but Membu possesses that as well. He is everything I want in a tackle. He might be a little short, and I'm willing to move him back some. 7, agreed. It might be high, but 6 might be high. I'm gonna stand on it. Armand Membu, tackle 2, freak athlete and the kind of player you want on your offensive line. Get the best players out there, and he is one of the best players in this class.
So I don't really have a great case against Membu because I don't think he's bad. It was just I was the lowest one on him,
Yeah, that
and
de facto.
that's yeah. There's just some better guys at the top of the class this year than him. So I personally, let's see, I had him at 18. So I mean, it's hard because I think Kenneth Grant's great. I think James Pierce Jr. is great. So just by default had to fall a little bit lower. Aaron already went over how he's an elite athlete. No problem there. Same arm length as Donovan Jackson. So again, it's weird how similar some of these guys are in that aspect. But what I did knock him on was occasionally. Again, all of this is occasionally because Membu's film is phenomenal. He whiffed on a few blocks with poorly timed punch or a lean, and then occasionally misses a speed rusher and lets him loose, but got bailed out because quarterback gets it out quickly. So shout out Brady Cook.
We're not shouting out Brady Cook. That's not happening on this podcast at all. He is the reason
but
Luther Burden is so low on your boards.
but yeah, so I don't really have a case against Mibu. It was just by default, I like some guys better.
Thanks.
No,
Right on.
props to you guys because like genuinely, he's a great player. I just like some guys better.
Yeah.
Totally fair. Last note on Membu. He is only 20 years old right now. So I think a lot of room to grow and develop as well as a player. All right. Next one up here is going to be Shavon Ravel. I am not quite sure how to say it. I've heard it both ways. He is a DB out of
You don't even know how to
ECU.
say his name, and you're gonna defend him on our boards. Mm-mm.
Well, I'm defending him though from a negative connotation, so I think
Are you
I
the
think
lowest
that
one?
actually works in my favor. Yes, I am. So Siobhan Revell Jr. Ryan has at 21. I have him at 52. Aaron at
Yeah.
40. So second round type of prospect for me, and Aaron first round for Ryan. So gonna start out here with me going defending my low ranking of Siobhan Revell Jr. starting now. This is a guy I'm not going to completely stand on because I've only watched one game so far of his film. It was against ODU, and they run such a Mickey Mouse, that Tennessee Baylor style offense with all the really wide
Ob-
splits and guys
Objection.
everywhere.
ODU. I'm just objecting to the fact that you can't. Old Dominion doesn't count. They're not a real football team.
I mean, they beat Virginia Tech a couple
That's fair.
times. I don't know. They do they've been doing some things. So that's just a tough one to grade off of because that is not even close to what he's going to be seeing in the league. But when I did watch, didn't love how he moved. Looked just stiff is kind of how I described it in the way he moved, especially compared to I just watched Benjamin Morrison, who has just like chef's kiss hips in transition. Ravel was just not great there. Wasn't super tested. The Sunbelt receivers are just not good because if you're a good Sunbelt receiver, you transfer to the SEC or ACC. So just guys that I was watching him go up against are insurance salesmen and accountants. And so I'm like, don't love that. Also, the ACL obviously is a thing. So we don't know his medicals, but for me, if you're already going to be a little stiff and that's what I'm going with, and then you tear your ACL, not great. And I wonder if you're losing a year on the rookie contract too, just even if he does come back, which it seems like he's going to, will you get the best Ravel Jr. here with his ACL year? So while, like I said, this is not me being fully dug in on this. Those were some of the negatives that I saw that made him drop a little bit to the second round.
I get it. I gotta be honest. I think he's a six. I mean, 6'3", 193. I think he's a very fantastic frame, like hands in his pockets in his knees kind of player. But I get it. I think a lack of athleticism is really. I don't want to say athleticism because he's. I'm not. He's not. I'm not going to say he's a bad athlete. Fluidity was the word that you used there, right? The hips and the ability to move. Um, 9 and 5/8 inch hands. I mean, his wingspan is crazy. He ran a 4.40. He's an athlete. He's an explosive athlete. The question is for NFL teams, are you comfortable teaching someone fluidity and hoping the rest, hands, coverage chops, and athleticism comes along with it?
We don't have Ryan on this, but honestly, Ryan, I would love to hear your thoughts with you being the highest and seeing him
Can I
as
call a
a
witness
first round
instead?
corner. I was, yeah, sure. So I'll give you a minute 30 if obviously you don't have to use all that time, but if you want to go into some of the things that you really liked out of Rebel.
So we haven't gotten to dive deep into cornerback film, but from what I have seen out of Ravel is long rangey cornerback can pretty much play anywhere in the secondary. I mean, he primarily played out wide, but again, he did get hurt, so there's that downside. But from what I've seen on Twitter and some reports, is he's cleared. He should have no problem. Will be ready for training camp, and that's all I need to know. Is are you going to be ready to step into the building day one and play ball? Again, film is king. Tyler said that he was playing against some accountants.
Again, Liberty plays ECU. We all went to Liberty. We understand what goes into football there. This is not NFL caliber prospects at every single position or at any of them.
Yeah, but neither is Utah State. But you want to
Well,
say that you're a
wait, I
small
think
school advocate?
Wait, you just attacked Jalen Royals.
Jalen Royals can do it against some great defenses.
Okay. There is a difference. We're gonna move on. Um, Small school advocate. I've been put on this side. I don't like that I'm attacking small school players.
well, player who was not
Put your
at a
money where
small
your
school,
mouth
he
is,
was
Aaron.
Wait, what do you mean?
I'm
confirmed
bringing you back
not.
to the stands.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Siobhan Revel.
Why are you not a small school advocate, Aaron? Why do you call yourself that and not advocate for any of the small school players?
He's gonna be a good second round corner. I don't know what you want me to say.
No, I'm kidding. Don't worry about it. It is a tough one to evaluate, especially in the area of the transfer
What
portal.
I don't want to happen is he was a genuine consensus first rounder in 2023.
And they got hurt.
That was a consensus. Everyone thought that. Then he got hurt.
Except for you, who had Jalen Royals as
Benjamin
the.
Morrison got hurt. You don't see him falling. He's still in the 20s.
I hear you. I do think that the small school film can really hurt players, and the lack thereof of small school film.
But don't let it be the only thing.
We're
Is my
not.
problem.
It wasn't
I
it
know. I know.
it wasn't the first thing discussed. The first thing Tyler talked about is fluidity, and then he went into how Sunbelt receivers can struggle, and that's something I agree with. Is like Sunbelt receivers are could be accountants and insurance salesmen and linebackers coach on their current college team. I mean, corners just Quinyon Mitchell, right? We found him at the Senior Bowl, and then the combine really put him on boards. It wasn't until then that people started to dive in, and even then, you had to pull out like he was a gem in film. I don't think Revel is nearly as talented as Quinyon was coming out of Toledo. I think he's a good player. I have him as a day two player, but I'm not going to defend. I'm not going to fight for him to be drafted round one just because he went to ECU.
I know this is completely different, but I just wanted like semi comparison. Derek Stingley Jr. got hurt. It was like week 3. Again, big school LSU, but what I don't want to happen is him to slide because he also got hurt. So I understand those are like the two is the injury in the small school.
Stingley looks like a freaking all pro at the corner right now. He looks incredible.
I know, so don't let it slide. It will pan out. I promise you.
But what's tough is when you're going off of like consensus before he plays a full. Well, he didn't get to play a full season, but a full season. Like a lot of stuff. Deion Walker was a consensus first round pick,
No, I
right?
would not say he was a consensus first round pick.
Dude, every mock before this college football season had Deion Walker in the first round or in their top 32
We'll
players.
do a way
And
too
then
early
he
big
went
board.
out and played and went to the Senior Bowl and went to the combine and is no longer a first round player. So I definitely you're totally right. Don't just say, hey, small school equals not good enough player. But when we're talking about another small school corner in Quinyon, you know what really did it for me is that he played Ohio State and covered those guys really well. Unfortunately, and this is not something to hold against Revel, he doesn't schedule for ECU. They didn't play anybody
No,
like
but
that. And so it's just tough to then
in the
project.
defense of ECU, it has gotten significantly harder in the last 3 to 5 years to schedule group of five versus power five teams, right? Power four, I guess now. I don't know what changed. Maybe it was genuinely Liberty's undefeated season where they like, oh crap, power four could lose to group of five and get really embarrassed by this. But it's getting worse and worse and more difficult for power five to schedule outside of the power five. And that's made for tough schedules. It made for tough film watching, right? It just is difficult. Now, for our next player, they're in the power four. And this is the biggest name, I think, in the NFL draft right now. And Ryan, it is your turn to defend your stance on Shadur Sanders, quarterback out of Colorado.
All right. So my thing with Shador
Well, first
is
off, tell the people where you're standing because we said your stance and we don't know where you actually are on the big board.
so I'm defending on why he's bad because I have him. Where do I have him?
He's 44 overall on our board with a score of
I
47.
thought you
I
had
have
him at
him at
60
60.
even.
He is
Haha. I didn't remember that.
So,
he
uh,
is two slots. Jackson Dart 42, Josh Connolly Jr. 40 or 43, and then Shadur Sanders 44. QB2 and QB3 are 42 and 44 on our big board. It's kind of crazy. Ryan, you're the lowest of the three of us on him at 60.
yeah, that's crazy because Milrose not far behind. Anyways, the easiest way to put it is A, I don't like the shenanigans, but B, the arm. Great pocket passer, and he has amazing accuracy. You could throw that term out there all day, but I struggle with the deep ball. You cannot be a quarterback at the NFL level and struggle with the deep ball. You can't put power behind it. Can't zip it. Get it in the tight windows, especially down the field. and doesn't hit the receivers in stride was the biggest thing I've seen. He makes the receivers do the work for him. Fun little stats. So the offense he had didn't really make him have to throw far either as well because they knew of the lack of abilities. Screens, hitches, slants, and shallows is primarily what we saw. Ranked 112 in air yards per throw, and he was ninth in the country in percentage of throws at or behind the line of scrimmage. And I forget what the stat was we threw out the other day. Tyler pulled it up. What was it like?
Yeah, only 44% of his passes, sorry, timer going off here. Only 44% of his passes were 10 plus air yards, which was 101st in the
Yeah.
FBS.
So incredibly, and I stress incredibly poor at passing down the field. That's not good. You're a quarterback. You should be playing at the highest level, and you have Travis Hunter on your side of the ball. I'm a little worried. More than a little worried, put it frank. So I don't know if that's gonna pan out so well, and I really, really, really hope someone doesn't take him early because they're gonna regret it.
Mr. Wright, your time is up. Tyler Hill, your witness. You have him
So
at 43 on your board. You
at 43, I was going to say this is going to make for not probably a great cross examination because I agree with everything Ryan said. Basically, I just think I guess I value that a little more. So because I think he'll be a fine quarterback in the league. His arm is not great, but it's good enough to where he will not be. There's not a throw. That's not true. There's throws that he can't
See,
make, but
see.
but what I meant by that is there's nothing that just holds him back from being able to be an average quarterback in the league. Like there's not it's not that he has a 4 out of 10 arm or a 5 out of 10 arm. It's not Dylan Gabriel, where I genuinely like Dylan Gabriel's arm honestly was not even great for college. It wasn't that for Shador. It is a 6.5. I have it as a 7 out of 10 to where it is passable to be a starting quarterback in the league. You just have to calibrate your expectations. If you are okay with, as a team, taking him wherever you take him and knowing that he will ceiling out as the 13th best QB in the league and be maybe a floor of the 20th best QB in the league, if you're okay with him being in that range with where you take him, then you're good. I just think you can't go into it going, man, he could be a top 5 QB because the comp that a lot of people give is Joe Burrow and he's not
So
that,
let
right?
me pause you there and present new evidence to either side. The comp I've
Your Honor, I have a
seen,
question.
yes, Mr. Wright.
Do you legitimately think Shadur Sanders can win a Super Bowl?
Well, that is a really loaded question. Yes,
Yes. There are some bad quarterbacks who have won Super
Eli
Bowls.
Manning won two.
Like
Eli
bad.
Manning won back-to-back Super Bowls against like Tom Brady.
Eli Manning won a lot. I know you guys love him, but Nick Foles won a Super
Hmm.
Bowl.
What by the Tyler? We love him because of who he is, not because of his talent. The comp I've seen a lot for Shedeur Sanders has been Brock Purdy recently because of their similar abilities, and they both prefer short yardage. They're both hella accurate. Hella accurate. They are both kind of like computer minds. They have super high football IQ, and so that's something that is in Shedder's favor. I have him actually the highest. I have him at 38. Um, and I do think that he's a very high football IQ. He understands the game, understands what read to throw to, when to bail out. The issue I have with him is he takes too many sacks. That's like that. He took the most sacks in the FBS this year. That's something neither of you mentioned. Tyler, that's a poor job as Cross to not, or I guess Ryan, that was a poor job.
I was supposed to I didn't want that to come up.
He took the most sacks in the FBS this year and the third most the season before that. Granted, Colorado's offensive line sucks, but sacks is not a kind of
But it wasn't all on his O
exactly.
line.
Sacks is not the kind of thing that falls away when you get to the NFL. Look at Caleb Williams. Still took a lot of sacks. Had a rough rookie season. Stoudemire is not going to be a plus starter in the NFL until he gets to a quality situation. And where he goes in this year's draft is not going to be a quality situation unless he's drafted by, say, I know this is my just go-to for putting quarterbacks in a good spot, but the Rams. If he falls to like the Rams at where are they? 22? Somewhere similar?
I think they're
19?
19.
If he and they take him to back up Matt Stafford and that becomes their succession plan, I'm fully on board. fully on board with that. I think that'd be fun. But no, I think Shadur Sanders is volatile, and the circus that comes with him is potentially cancerous.
Exactly.
And
So
I
why
have
would
him
you draft him?
highest because quarterback is the most it's the most valuable position in sports. I'm on this stand next for Tyler. Do you have anything to say about Shadur before we move on?
That's good.
Jihad Campbell, the linebacker slash edge rusher out of Alabama. I get to defend Ryan. You are cross examination. I had Jihad. How high did I have him? I knew I have him higher. Yeah,
22.
I have him high. I regret nothing. Um, and Ryan was the lowest on him, having him at 43. So I think we agree that he's a late first, early second kind of player. Consensus on our board, he landed at a nice little 28, very similar to where we have him all have him graded. Campbell is a victim to the school he chose to go to. First and foremost, he deserves to be, if he chooses to, a top tier edge rusher in the NFL. He was recruited as an edge player. He was practiced to be an edge player, and then he went to a school with Will Anderson and all the talent on that, and Dallas Turner and all the talent on that Alabama defense. So they said, "Hey, can you learn how to play linebacker?" And he began to play a linebacker role for Alabama, and he did a fantastic job of it. Now he's projected to be a first round level player in the NFL. When I draft Jihad Campbell, if I were to draft him, Tyler Ryan, one of the things you love about Donovan Jackson is his versatility, his ability to play every spot on the line. The NFL is quickly coming to a place where multi-position and defensive players, Zach Bond being the big one who just got an extension, right? There are a bunch of players who are learning. Leo Chenal for the Chiefs, hand in the dirt, could play off-ball linebacker. Players are playing multiple positions on the defensive front, linebacker and edge rusher. Campbell is just the next step in evolution of the NFL front man. He is going to rush the passer with extreme success. He's going to defend. He's going to run stop. He can do everything you ask of him as a linebacker and an edge defender. And he's going to do it as a freaky athlete and a crazy productive player, which is why I have him so high.
Here's the thing with Campbell. He might be one of the only players on my big board that might rise a little bit. And when I say a little bit, I'm talking jumping from like 42 to possibly 30. And that's a big jump. So we haven't gotten to cover linebackers in depth either. But I did watch one game. And from what I saw, uh, tackles high, uh, gets bad leverage, so he needs to get better there. Uh, cannot get off blocks great, which is a little concerning since he was an edge player and should know how to hand fight. Don't see that. Loses track of the ball sometimes because he's at the linebacker position. Just, I mean, gets lost in the forest, and then takes poor angles. All things that you don't want to see from a linebacker taken in the first round. But there's still lots of good. So again, I really do want to see some of the other games against some better competition, see how he performs. But it's an interesting case study. And again, we talk about Swiss Army knives all the time. Isaiah Simmons didn't really pan out.
Well,
But
I would argue he got to the NFL before his time. He was
but yeah, and
a
he was
generation
also
ahead.
a transition from safety. It was that kind of mix. And we're talking about a linebacker to edge like Abdul Carter. So, well, let's switch positions. So it's interesting. We see the transition from linebacker to edge, not the other way around. So it's something to keep your eye on. But again, pretty good athlete. But on film, I have some concerns so far.
Allow me to counter with, by the way, Daniel Jeremiah, who, again, we've quoted a few times on the show, has him at 12 overall on his big board. So I
Yeah, too
am
high.
not the highest on him at all, nowhere near. You say he's a good athlete. I'd argue he's a fantastic athlete. 9.85 RAS score, broad jump of 10.7. That's in the 96th percentile. 4.52 40-yard dash, standing 235. So he might be a little light, but whatever. Put some sand in his pants, he'll still be fine. 10-yard split of 1.6 unofficial. not the best get off on the 10-yard split in the 83rd percentile, but he was in the 96th percentile in overall 40-yard dash speed, which shows to me that he can hit that top speed needed, even if he's a little slow to accelerate. He has the full sideline to sideline ability. He is a rangy linebacker who can do whatever you need as a defensive coordinator. I want to see him go somewhere fun. I want to see him go somewhere where they can actually use him. I want to see him go to Seattle. That's my dream. Give him to Mike
I just
McDonald.
thought about this, and I think the new metric or standard evaluation of linebackers should be: can you tackle Derrick Henry one on one? And if you can't,
Cooper DeJean,
you
LB1.
fall.
Well, I don't know. I don't. There's kind of only one Derrick Henry.
Can you tackle Derrick Henry or not?
Just take him to the combine. Say, Derek, I need you to stand here and run forward. I mean,
Oklahoma drill with every single linebacker.
if Cooper DeJean was actually that, I can't get over the fact that he just wrapped Derrick Henry and put him in the dirt. One of my favorite plays of the season.
Perfect execution, and that is the definition of a textbook tackle.
Tyler, where are you at on Campbell? Because I feel like I'm not as high on him as I could be, and I'm really high on him.
Really, really good player. Coverage, outstanding. 6'4", takes up a lot of space, especially in the middle of the field. Good pass rusher already with, I think, a ton of room to improve. You see him trying some moves like the cross chop, winning with speed. The bend he has is ridiculous. And then when it comes to linebacker, he's only been playing it for a year, and that's a tough position. And so I think there's definitely reason to believe there's room to grow there in terms of just reading plays. But I already think in the one game I watched, his instincts were pretty good. Honestly, he wasn't wrong a ton in terms of fitting his run assignment, getting back in zone, stuff like that. And then the athleticism kind of rounds it out for me. And because of that, I think he's the best pure linebacker in this
I agree,
class.
and I think well, Jalen Walker
I
is
was gonna
another
Sorry, I
linebacker.
was gonna
He's
say
not a.
that's where I
I don't call him a
struggle
pure
Okay,
because
linebacker.
the game I specifically watched, he didn't get targeted a ton, so I wasn't able to measure his coverage skills.
That's-
But that's why I pointed out so many run deficiencies was because it was the only thing he got to do all game. So I was
yeah,
like,
but I would say that not getting targets a lot. Like you look at corners and you're like, okay, he hasn't
I
touched
know,
the
I
ball
know
in
that
three.
that
Yeah, it's a
I
positive.
know.
I also I don't know. The Jalen Walker is an interesting. We'll get to him another day. We have him right now on our big board. I think it's like,
Well, I think we're actually getting to him
are
right
we getting to him right
now.
now? Oh my gosh, we are getting to him right now. Tyler, you're on the stand defending Jalen Walker. Break
I
it down,
am.
brother.
Yeah, so I am the lowest here on Jalen Walker. I have him at 16. Gonna double check here, but I believe we had him at 10. Yep, 10 on our big board. So I'm not too far behind that, but I think I have more concerns than you guys. Ryan has him at 8, and then Aaron at 7. Aaron, you had your hand
Yeah, can I
raised.
guess what your one of your arguments is going to be? You don't
Sure,
you
yeah.
don't know where to put him, and that hurt, and that makes you question some of his value as a prospect.
Correct. That is a big part. Sorry, I'm gonna start the clock here so that I'm not just running over on my
It's all
own
good. I
time.
talked for
Okay.
like 10 minutes on Giat Campbell.
I know. But we're good. We are going on. So a lot of Jalen Walker's sacks, pressures, just kind of pressure stats in general are cleanup. It's a lot of him playing spy, and then somebody else gets pressure, and then he gets to take credit with the sack pressure, and then even a couple, mainly in the Texas game. Shout out Quinn Ewers again. Quinn Ewers pretty much runs directly into Walker 2 or 3 times during that game. And so when I'm looking at, oh, this Texas game, he put up stats. Okay, but how much of that is actually translatable? He is winning versus an offensive lineman. So when you look at his PRP, which this is a formula that combines sacks, hits, hurries relative to how many times that they rush the passer. His was 10.7. That was in the 120s for linebackers. That's not great. So overall, I don't think he's super refined as an edge. He wins right now with just pure athleticism. He is really athletic. Is that enough to where he's that elite of an athlete to where he can continue to just win with that because he's got short arms and he is a smaller player in general? I don't know. I was talking with my buddy who's a linebackers coach in high school right now, and when he watched him, he said he's just not very instinctual. Like he doesn't see it. He's wrong a lot, especially if a team gives eye candy in terms of motions and things like that. He will guess wrong. And so, not that that kills you as a prospect because that is a teachable thing. But what that gets me to is he Isaiah Simmons or is he Zach Bond? Is he a guy who you don't know where to put him, and he's actually not elite at anything. He's just like kind of good at both spots, and so you would actually rather just have two other guys that are better there, or is he Zach Bond where he genuinely is really really good at both spots? There's a couple other guys that you could say, Hamilton is the safety version of this. Kyle Hamilton for the Ravens. Buda Baker is probably another one where he plays in the box and then can play safety a lot as well. Antoine Winfield Jr. for the Bucks. There's some other examples. So it's not like this is unheard of where you can be a two position guy. You just have to be able to figure that out. And again, 16, right? That's him going the top half of the first round. But those questions, I think, don't make him a slam dunk top 10 prospect for me.
I hear you, and I get it. I think the biggest thing for me is if you're drafting Walker, you need to have a plan for him. You need to have a plan of how to use him. Same thing is like when we talked about Cooper DeJean in last year's class, right? We said when you draft Cooper or when you draft Travis Hunter in this year's class, you need a plan. You can't just pick a guy. Okay, he's BPA, he's best player available in this class on this board right now, so we're just going to take him. No, have a plan. Have a plan if you're going to draft Jalen. Have a plan if you're going to draft Giat. Have a plan if you're going to draft Travis Hunter because they're unique players. Every player is unique, but some are more unique than others, right? Walker, I think, is one of the more interesting prospects in this class because of how I would say, I don't know if I don't want to just say this off the cuff without fully, okay, I'm just going to say it. I think he might have the highest ceiling in this class while also having one of the lowest floors. Because you said it, I loved what you said there. Is he Isaiah Simmons or is he Zach Bond? It's one or the other. He can't be both. He has to either like I think more than anyone else, he is going to be an incredible linebacker in this new era of NFL defense where Seattle and Mike McDonald are doing incredible things. Vic Fangio is reviving defenses apparently in one season. Steve Spagnuolo is still incredible over in Kansas City. Defenses are being modernized in a way we haven't seen in the NFL in the last few years, and it's at a very alarmingly awesome rate. Is Walker the next step in that evolution? Or could he fail miserably because a team does not know how to use him? And he's just going to be an athlete that everyone's like, what if? Could he be the biggest what if, or is he going to be an all pro? I like the ceiling. That's where I'm at. I think the ceiling, when you draft, you don't draft for stability. And when you're drafting, okay, well, let me rephrase. Some players you draft for stability, Emeka Egbuka. Some players you draft to take explosive home run swings. He's a home run swing, and I'm more confident he will be a big hit than a swing and a miss.
Yeah, because what's important to remember with hybrid players is because for any hybrid player, not just Walker, they need to be either elite at one thing or elite at both things. You cannot just be okay at a lot of
Yes.
things and go, "Oh, that's cool." This is kind of the Nick Imnwari thing that I want to figure out. Is he played box and high? Is he just okay at both, or is he really good at one, or can he be really good at both? So that's just something to keep
What
in
helps
mind.
in Walker is he is elite at being an athlete, right? And at the very least, he has that going for him. And I'm curious to see the more film. I'm gonna obviously need to watch more film before we can do our big board number two, whenever we do it. Um, but is he an elite edge rusher? Is he elite off ball linebacker? Is he elite in coverage? But
Well, we didn't include him in our edge rankings.
right, we didn't
So
include him. He's gonna be used in our. We'll have to talk about him next to Giat Campbell and Carson Schlesinger in the next linebacker class. Um, so it'll be interesting. I'm curious to see how it goes. But Daniel Jeremiah has them listed at edge. I think there's a lot of weird hybrids in this class, and he's one of them.
Before we get out here, because that's all the court cases we have, did anything else jump out to you guys? Could be discrepancies, could be maybe a player you expected to be higher on that we're all pretty solidly together on, or vice versa, where you expect to be lower on a guy and he ended up being pretty solidly connected with the rest of the group.
Uh, Tyler Booker, who I have at 53, and I thought I'd be the lowest. Ryan has him at 66, and Tyler has him at 32. So this isn't a full court case, but Tyler, did his athleticism not scare you as much as it seemed to scare me and Ryan?
Not really. He's playing guard, and that was never going to be his game anyway. Way more strength, gap scheme, get your hands on a dude and just kick him out the club with your strength. So that for me, again, we said this with or I said this with the combine. I didn't expect him to test this bad, but I just was ready, and I moved him down because of the testing. He was originally going to be in the 20s for me. Moved him down to 32 because the testing is bad. But it was never going to be this massive drop for him because I didn't think he was going to test very well, and that's not what he does well. and is still a very good player despite that.
Ryan, you had Harold Fenton Jr. at 39.
Yeah,
Tyler and I were both in the 60s.
don't get me wrong. I don't think Harold Ferdinand Jr. is bad by any means, but he's not Colston Loveland and he's not Tyler Warren. So it's hard to put him up against other guys because he kind of has his own thing. He doesn't do anything that we've seen recently that I can compare it to. So it's hard to rank him. But again, just pretty much a receiving threat in the game. It's just a big body receiver, if you want to call it that. I mean,
Big
Yeah.
slot.
yeah. So I have him at 39, but again, that's fluid. We also haven't done tight ends yet, but I've watched 2 games, Bowling Green. So
Yeah. I think that's it for me. I don't know. There's Johnny Barron at 27 is fun for me. I think it's just fun, but I don't know if there's anything to talk about there.
Yeah. Last thing I want to say is if we each wanted to hit on one guy that we had in our top 50 that the other two didn't.
ooh.
So, for example, just to give you guys some time to find one, because I know I'm jumping you with it here. CJ West, defensive tackle for Indiana. I love this guy. Disruptive in every game you watch against really good offensive lines in the Big Ten. Did it against Ohio State, did it against Michigan. Whoever you put him up against, he was winning way more than he was losing. Looks really athletic and then tested very, very well in the combine. I think that he should be drafted late second round and definitely shouldn't go out at day 2. I had him at 49 just because of how disruptive he is. He also has more pass rush than you would expect from a guy just of his body type because of his athleticism, because he's really quick, can push the pocket well. So love, love, love CJ West. Again, defensive tackle from Indiana.
I think my
Which, sorry, I had him at 49. Aaron had him at 70. Ryan at 95.
Yeah. A guy that Field Yates actually put on my radar, I think in like January, is a guy who had 4 sacks, 2 interceptions. That'd be Carson Schweissinger, who I had at 40. I'm looking at this. I'm finding. I think where'd he go? I saw it.
So you had him at
Yeah.
42. I am at 53. Ryan at 68.
Yeah. I stand by it. I think he should have made the top 50. He was 51 overall. And I think he is the LB 2 or 3 commit, considering do you think Walker is a linebacker? Right. I think I have him right behind Campbell. I think he is more of the typical linebacker, the typical coverage linebacker that you see. Um, he's going to get his nose in the dirt and he's just going to play rough. And I like it. I think he's a perfect round 2. You have a hole at linebacker. He's going to fill a need kind of player. I like him not for his ceiling, but for his floor. He's generating hype for me.
See, this is hard for me because I had 4 guys in the 40s that made my top 50, and you guys didn't have them. Judkins was one of them, but Aaron had Judkins at 54, so I'll
Mhm.
let that slide. Baron Sorrell, Dylan Sampson, and Omar Norman Law are the 3 that I think I'm very, very far apart from you guys on. Sorrell, edge out of Texas, again, one of the biggest Senior Bowl risers. Dylan Sampson, again, we had that running back talk. We don't really know or have a consensus on these running backs. But Sampson was one guy that I actually like above some others like Caleb Johnson. So that, and then Omar Norman Lott, who uh, is being listed as edge in some other places, but I have him as an IDL, and that podcast will be coming out soon.
Also, I had Tate Ratledge at 48, who I think could have made it. Where did he end up ranking?
Yeah, he's not
Ratledge.
far off. I have him at 58.
Yeah, I think he had it at 54 on our board.
Or sorry, I had him at 56. My bad.
How dare you? 2 spots off. I think we've just started listing off where we have guys, and you can all check it out. We have our top 50 published. If we start listing things off or getting to fantasy football talk, it's time to end the show. Thank you all for listening. We are not going to have a show Monday due to scheduling issues and a whole bunch of stuff going on, but it's okay. Thank you for listening. We'll be back Thursday, and I have no idea what we're doing. We got to figure that out. So maybe a mock with this new big board. We'll figure it out. Thank you all for listening. Mind the gap on your way out.